Lord Almighty in the temple after the death of the king. It's a vision that is related to Ezekiel's. They've got a whole lot in common. It included, like Ezekiel's, amazing angel creatures poetically described in vivid details, and at the same time leaving many details to the imagination. There's a vision that totally destroys and overwhelms Isaiah. He cries out, "Woe to me! I am undone!" And the Hebrew word woe is oi. Isn't that perfect? Oi! I am melting! Ezekiel has a similar response. He finds himself laying face down on the ground as God comes to speak to him. And then later on, he finds himself sitting, stunned, for 7 days. 7 days. Ezekiel and Isaiah both hear a call of God in the ministry. Isaiah hears God call. God, almost as if God is wondering, whom shall I send him? Who will go for us? And Isaiah's hand shoots up. Here I am. Send me. That wasn't Ezekiel's experience. Ezekiel was too stunned to speak. Ezekiel's grief was so deep he had no words. And so God plucked him up almost by the shoulders and stood him on his feet so God could speak with him, and then plucked him up again and carried him from one place to another and calls him mortal, or the traditional words, son of man. I'm sending you to the people of Israel, to a nation of rebels who have rebelled against me. Whoa! How did I get that job? Thank you very much. But you know, Isaiah got a similar job. Isaiah is told right there in that vision sequence, say to these people, keep listening, but do not comprehend. I'm grateful that I have been sent to a people who listen. At least most of them, right? Right. Now, as much as these two passages have in common, there are huge differences. Isaiah's ministry comes when Judah, the southern kingdom, is still vibrant and stable, though they have begun that always dangerous walk away from their God. He speaks of coming catastrophe, of conquest and exile, and in the final portion of the book, he addresses the future exiles long before their birth, with comfort, with the promise of return to the Lord and return to their land. Ezekiel's ministry happens in that gap. He's part of the first generation of exile. Judah remains still a state, but a vassal state of Babylon. Ezekiel's part of a brain drain, a cynical and deliberate attempt to take the head of the civilization so that there will be no more rebellion, no more declaration of independence, no more television tea parties, just empire. But these exiles do not need comfort like Isaiah's exiles did, the exiles of the future. These exiles need a dose of real politics, and they need a total dismantling of their sense of privilege in the world. They still believe Judah will rise. They believe their return and triumph are imminent, and that as God's chosen people, this is just a bump in the road. Ezekiel declares otherwise. Judah and Jerusalem face total destruction. Exile will be longer than your lifetime. And you have no spiritual privilege that exempts you from the call to live in obedience to God. Huge differences between Isaiah and Ezekiel in terms of their historical location and their message because of this. There are also huge differences in the personalities of the prophets. Now, they're both preaching judgment to people who won't listen. But Isaiah's life and message are filled with songs. Texts that even today we keep putting to music. The songs that come from Ezekiel are spirituals. They're slave songs, music for the oppressed, not for the privileged. Ezekiel saw the weak. Them bones, them dry bones. Now, I do need to say, some of Isaiah's songs are wonderful songs for the oppressed as well. But they were songs to begin with, not for Ezekiel. No singing. No singing in his story. Ezekiel said it's grieving. At one point in the story, Ezekiel's wife dies, and God tells him, Ezekiel, you may not mourn. So he's grieving, but it's all on the inside. And you see this incredible depth of feeling. But on the outside, nothing. Nothing. Ezekiel sees incredible visions. Many of them most of Israel's prophets did not see visions like at the rate that Ezekiel did. That was highly unusual. Ezekiel uses absurd imagery and weird sign acts. He lays siege to a figurative Jerusalem. It's a brick. And Ezekiel is laying on his side for 390 days. I'm thinking to myself about bed sores. But he's immobilized by God for 390 days. Laying siege to a brick. And shaving his hair with a sword, and then chopping it up in the wind like he's dramatizing the destruction of the city. And all of his meals for 390 days are cooked over dried cow. This guy has some strange stories. And among all the eccentrics who served as Israel's prophets, Ezekiel takes the cake. And strange as he is, he has a whole lot to say to us as disciples of Jesus in the U.S. of A. You know, our Constitution tells us that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, yet in our nation we have a long-running cultural compact. Prayer in schools, the Ten Commandments on the walls of the courthouses, the Nativity set in the municipal building, and no stores open on Sundays. Now, I don't have a memory of that. And I think it was still going on some while I was alive, but I was in other countries at the time, so I just don't remember. But I know for many folks, there's a great grief in the way times have changed and the way the cultural compact has dissolved. And there's this hope, like Ezekiel's exile community, for a return to that state of privilege. And it won't happen. Our national values have been secularized. Our population is becoming more and more diverse. And that can be, please hear this, that can be a good and holy thing for us and our mission as disciples of Jesus Christ, if we're willing to learn some lessons from this unusual prophet. Ezekiel speaks to exiles, and there are three key dimensions of the exile experience that we need to recognize in the text and recognize the parallels, the dim parallels in our own lives. First is the displacement of change. Change. Who loves change? You know, only when it's our idea. But after that, not really. You know, Robin goes and gets her hair done. And you know, this happens on a regular basis. And she comes back. And it might even be the exact same hair as the last time. But you know, between those times her hair got longer and the color shifted just slightly. And she says, how do I look? And I say, honey, you look beautiful. I have to get used to the hair. And it's been 25 years, and she knows this about her husband now, so she doesn't feel, you know, offended or slighted or less in any way. She just, you know, well, that's JP. And in a few days, it'll be okay. Because change displaces us. Even good change, even little change. You know, new carpet, but it's not my favorite color. New leadership. Oh, new music. Jack, I love that little picture you sent me by email. It had Jack Sparrow, one of those scenes in that Disney Pirates of the Caribbean series, and he's running from some horde of people after him, and it says, all I said was the hymnal could use some, you know, changes. Yes, change displaces us. And I just wish, you know, we all drove buggies and wrote handwritten letters that were delivered by the Pony Express like the good old days. Yeah. Except that in those good old days, maternal mortality rate was huge. We had separate but equal accommodations, supposedly. And domestic abuse was tolerated. So maybe they weren't that good. No matter how much we may struggle with change in general, or even change in the church, we've got nothing on Ezekiel and the exiles of Judah. They were forcibly relocated from their native land. They directly witnessed the slaughter, torture, and rape of family members and friends. The displacement of change. Second dimension of the exile experience, the loss of anchored traditions. Despite wandering away from God, they still value the temple. They still believed in God's promise to the house and lineage of David. Now, however, they was no place for formal worship and sacrifice. There were no traditional duties for a priest like Ezekiel, and there was no king. In the words of Psalm 11, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? The displacement of change, the loss of anchor traditions, and the third dimension of the exile experience, the pressure to assimilate. In the words of the Lord, collective, resistance is futile. You will be assimilated. And now that you have been forcibly relocated to another land, now that you've lost your anchor traditions, how do you pass that on to your children and grandchildren? How do you do it? Is it best now for us to become total oddballs in a different place? Or is it best for us to totally fit in? Or is there a third way? An alternate path to faithfulness that does not require the comfort of the familiar. The exile experience, displacement of change, loss of anchor traditions, and pressure to assimilate. It is into this context, one of painful change, disorienting loss, and severe pressure, that the glory of God appears to the priest Ezekiel. 4 living creatures serve as the chariot throne of God, each with 4 faces and 4 wings, each with gyroscopic eye-studded wheels. That's strange. And if that's not strange enough, as Ezekiel takes the description to the next level, to the throne of God itself and the likeness of the Almighty, Ezekiel runs out of vocabulary and keeps saying something like a crystal, something like a throne, something like sapphire, something like a human form, something like glowing amber, something like fire and clothes, something like a rainbow. Now, I just want to offer a total aside for just one moment on faithful imagination. The popular descriptions we hear or read of heaven and the glory of God pale in comparison to the vivid words and the overwhelming encounters that are reported in Scripture. Do we domesticate our dangerous God? Do we water down the glory of the Lord? Do we tell our story in a way that makes Jesus seem boring? The glory of the Lord appears to Ezekiel. There are a few themes of many in the vision that I want to lift up to support and inform our discipleship, whether or not we share with Ezekiel the visionary gift. First of all, mobility. The throne of God is not bolted to the temple floor or found in the king's palace or even in some separate heaven. The throne of God is on the move. Wings, wheels, wind, darting to and fro in the flash of lightning. Because of that mobility, Ezekiel knows all is well with God, even if all is not well with Jerusalem. Because of that mobility, Ezekiel knows that God can be with him, even though all of those anchor traditions have been lost. Because of that mobility, he knows that God is with us no matter what. And because of that mobility, Jesus says to a would-be disciple, he says, foxes have holes and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. So, you want to follow me? You're following a mobile God. A mobile God who does not let grass grow underfoot. Mobility, first theme. Second theme, creation. The rule of God extends far beyond the boundaries to which we routinely live in. The Apostle Paul echoes this theme when he declares that the entire creation waits with eager expectation. The creation is revealed here in these 4 creatures. They're called creatures. And each of them with 4 faces: human, lion, ox, eagle. And their sound of their wings is like the sound of mighty waters, a phrase that is used throughout the Bible for the jumble of multiple voices, all of them speaking at once. Like a giant cataract, a waterfall, mighty and many waters. It becomes an image in the Scripture for the entire human race. So all humanity, even Babylon, even an empire, will fall under the rule of God, under the throne of God, whether for judgment or blessing or both. So honor and care for all that God has made, and welcome the diversity of the human race mobility, creation, and the third theme, word. It is reassuring, to me at least, that the Lord comes to the prophet not only in vision, but in word. He hears the word of the Lord, and even better for a guy like me who likes to read, he's given a scroll with words on it and told to eat it, and it tastes like honey in my mouth. There's no need for us to desire an encounter with God that runs counter to how God has made us. And especially there's no need for us to seek visions. Simply seek Jesus. If God sends visions, well and good, but seek Jesus. And for every one of us, we can seek Jesus and find Jesus in Word, in the Scripture. So read it, devour it, digest it, taste it. And if reading is not your strong suit, there are plenty of ways to get the audio for free. Listen to it. Listen to it. Mobility, creation, work. Ezekiel's language and imagery for the glory of God shows up in the gospel stories of Jesus' transfiguration. His face is bright as the sun. Shows up in John's revelation visions where Jesus is even holding the stars in his hands and has a sword coming out of his mouth. There's all kinds of other stuff that shows up in there, all jumbled together. Now, John's visions in the revelation of Jesus' glory take images from prophets like Ezekiel and combine it with a theme in John's Gospel that labels the glory of God as the cross of Christ. So today, as we come to this table, the broken body, the poured out blood, we are coming face to face with the glory of Jesus. It's time for us to fall face down. Time for us to sit stunned. Time for us to appreciate this moment in all its mystery and power. Lord, be our vision today. Our hymn is number 451. I invite you to stand.